The day Ethan's mother moved into our house, I felt something in the air shift. Soft at first, like the way a room changes when someone stops loving you but hasn't said it out loud yet. That's how it began. Quietly. No slammed doors, no shouting, just a faint change in temperature that I couldn't explain. Back then, I still thought we were happy. Ethan and I had been married for 4 years. We weren't rich, but we were steady. A small home, 2 cars, and a rhythm that made sense. He'd hum in the mornings while shaving, and I'd make coffee, humming along. There was comfort in our routine, in the way he'd kissed my forehead before leaving for work, or how he'd call me sunshine, even on days when the world felt gray. I remember the smell of the house in those early years, coffee, cinnamon, and the faint scent of lavender from the candle I kept on the windowsill. We had friends over on weekends, laughter spilling into the night. Ethan would grill on the patio while I passed around cold lemonade. Those were good days, ordinary but full of love. Then, one phone call changed everything. It was a Sunday morning when Ethan came into the kitchen, his phone pressed to his ear and his expression pale. "Mom's not doing well," he said. "She can't stay alone anymore." His father had passed away 6 months earlier. I'd seen the grief in her eyes at the funeral, the way she clutched Ethan's arm, her only son, like he was all she had left. I understood. Truly, I did. So when Ethan asked if she could move in just for a few months, I said yes, without hesitation. It felt like the right thing to do, a good daughter-in-law thing to do. I cleaned out the guest room myself, washed the sheets twice, set out flowers, even made her favorite soup for her first night. When she arrived, I greeted her with open arms. "Mrs. Caldwell," I said, smiling. "Welcome home." She smiled too, but it didn't reach her eyes. "It's only temporary," she said, setting down her suitcase. "I wouldn't want to intrude." Still, from the way her eyes swept across the room, the walls, the furniture, the family pictures, it already felt like she was measuring the space, deciding where she belonged. For the first week, everything seemed fine. She kept to herself, mostly quiet but polite. She'd read in the living room, sip tea, and thank me for dinner. Ethan was happy to have her close. "She's been so lonely," he'd tell me, wrapping his arm around me. "You're doing a good thing." I believed him. I wanted to believe him. But slowly, the tone began to change. It started with small remarks, the kind that sound harmless until you hear them every day. "You use too much salt, dear. Ethan likes his shirts folded a different way." "Oh, I see you don't iron his work clothes in the mornings anymore." Each comment came with a soft smile and a tilt of her head, as if she were just trying to help. And Ethan? He didn't notice. Or maybe he didn't want to. At dinner one night, she laughed softly and said, "Back when I ran my house, Ethan never left a dish in the sink." Ethan chuckled. "Mom's right. You used to be more organized, babe." I looked at him, waiting for him to realize what he'd said, waiting for an apology, a glance, anything. But he just kept eating and the conversation moved on. That's when the silence began to grow between us, invisible but heavy, stretching from one room to another. Every night, Mrs. Caldwell would watch TV in the living room while Ethan sat beside her, their laughter echoing down the hall. I'd stay in the bedroom, pretending to read, listening to them share jokes I didn't understand anymore. When I'd walk in, she'd lower her voice. He'd stop smiling. The warmth that used to fill the room whenever I entered had turned into something cold, something measured. Still, I told myself it was temporary. I kept trying, cooked her favorite meals, offered to take her shopping, asked about her health. She'd thank me sweetly, then turn around and tell Ethan I seemed tired lately. One night, as I was washing dishes, I heard her whisper in the hallway. Her voice was low, but the house was quiet enough for every word to find me. "She doesn't take care of herself, Ethan. She's distracted, forgetful. You should be careful about the money." My hands froze in the soapy water. I waited for Ethan to defend me, to say something, anything, but all I heard was the sound of him sighing. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Maybe you're right." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out when I'd stopped being his partner and started being a problem to fix. The next morning, Ethan left for work early. Mrs. Caldwell came into the kitchen in her robe, smiling as if nothing had happened. "Morning, dear," she said, reaching for a cup. "Don't forget to pay the electricity bill." I noticed the envelope sitting unopened on the counter. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time, I saw it. The satisfaction behind her politeness, the way she was claiming tiny pieces of my life while pretending to help. That was the first time I felt it, the slow, quiet anger rising inside me, like heat. I didn't say a word. I just nodded, poured her coffee, and watched her stir in the sugar. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about helping. This was about control. And I wasn't ready yet, but a part of me, small, trembling but alive, began to whisper, "She doesn't know who she's dealing with." It's strange how quickly someone can turn your home into a place you don't recognize. Within a month of Mrs. Caldwell moving in, the walls of our house started to feel tighter, like they were listening, holding secrets I didn't know yet. Ethan's laughter changed first. It used to be easy, full and bright, the kind that made people turn and smile with him. But now it came out sharp, short, almost defensive, especially when I walked into the room. At breakfast, I noticed how she'd pour his coffee before I could. "Just like old times," she'd say, smiling. Ethan would grin and say, "Mom makes the best coffee." And I'd stand there, holding my own cup, pretending I didn't notice the shift in who made him feel cared for. The small things turned into bigger things. Bills that I usually handled started going missing. One day, the internet got disconnected, the payment forgotten. When I asked Ethan, he said, calmly, "Mom mentioned you've been distracted lately. Maybe I should take over for a while." Distracted? The word stung more than it should have. I wasn't distracted, I was being erased bit by bit. Still, I told myself not to overreact. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe grief had changed him. Maybe living with his mother was hard for both of us. But deep down I knew. Something had changed, not just in Ethan, but in the way he looked at me. He used to look at me like I was his home. Now it felt like he was watching me through someone else's eyes. One afternoon, I came home from work early. The sun was still high, the house quiet except for the faint hum of the dishwasher. As I set my bag down, I heard voices from the living room, low, urgent. I should have turned back. I should have walked away, but something in my chest told me to listen. "She doesn't understand how to manage a household," Mrs. Caldwell said, her tone clipped, but calm. I tried to tell her, but she's too proud. "You need to take control, Ethan. She's spending money like it grows on trees." "That's not fair, Mom," Ethan said. "She's been working hard." "Working hard?" She laughed softly. "On what?" "I saw the bank statement, Ethan. She bought new curtains last week, and do you know how much she paid for them? Maybe you should check before she drains your savings." There was a pause. I could hear him exhale, long and tired. "Maybe you're right," he said quietly. Those words hit like a punch. Not the accusation, not even the lies, but how easily he believed them. I leaned against the wall, my throat burning, listening as the woman who raised him slowly unstitched everything I'd built with him. When she was done, I walked into the kitchen, pretending I hadn't heard. I poured myself some water, hands trembling, just enough for her to notice. "Everything okay, dear?" she asked sweetly from the couch. I smiled. Perfectly fine. And in that moment, I understood what kind of game she was playing. That night, I confronted Ethan gently. "Did you talk to your mom about our finances?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He looked up from his phone, frowning. "Why?" "I just overheard some things earlier." He sighed. "Look, she is just trying to help. You know she used to handle everything for my dad. She's better with money than either of us." I laughed quietly, shaking my head. "Ethan, we have been managing fine for years." "Yeah, but lately, I don't know, you've been tired, forgetful. She just wants to make sure we are secure." Forgetful? There it was again, another word she had planted. "I'm not forgetful," I said softly. "I'm just not used to being treated like I don't belong in my own home." He looked away. You're overreacting. No anger, no defense, just dismissal. That somehow hurt more than shouting ever could. The following weeks were a blur of tension. Little by little, Mrs. Caldwell began taking control of everything: grocery lists, house bills, even how the furniture was arranged. One evening, I came home to find the photos from our honeymoon missing from the wall. When I asked where they went, she said, "Oh, I thought a more neutral look might be better. Less clutter." Neutral? She had erased us, our memories, our laughter, in the name of tidiness. Later, I found those pictures in a drawer, face down. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at Ethan. "Do you even see what's happening?" I asked. "She is turning this into her house, not ours." He rubbed his eyes. "She's just trying to help. Why do you always think the worst of her?" "Because she's not helping," I said. "She is controlling, and you're letting her." His voice rose for the first time in months. "She is my mother." The silence that followed was thick, heavy, final. He got up, left the room, and did not come back until I pretended to be asleep. That was the night I realized love is not always lost in one big moment. Sometimes it leaks out slowly through half-truths, side glances, quiet betrayals whispered in hallways. But even as I lay there in the dark, listening to the faint murmur of their voices from the living room, something inside me hardened. If she wanted a war, she had chosen the wrong woman. Because while Mrs. Caldwell believed she was pulling strings, I was already learning where they led. And when the time came, I would make sure both of them remembered exactly who I was and what I was capable of when cornered. There is a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from exhaustion. That's what our home turned into. Quiet, heavy, suffocating. By the third month of Mrs. Caldwell living with us, I had stopped expecting mornings to feel light. The air in the kitchen always smelled of her perfume now, sharp, floral, overbearing. Her coffee cup was always in my spot, her slippers always at the foot of our couch. One morning while cleaning, I opened the drawer near Ethan's desk and found something that made my heart stop. A folder labeled Finances New Plan. Inside were printed bank statements, contracts, and one document that froze me in place. It was a transfer authorization form, moving our joint savings into a new account, an account under Ethan's name, alone. At the bottom, there was a signature line, mine, but it was blank. I didn't know what to feel at first. Fear, anger, betrayal, all of them hit at once. When Ethan came home that evening, I waited. I didn't want to start with accusations. I wanted the truth. I made dinner, roast chicken, his favorite, and waited until we were alone. "Ethan," I said softly, "did you open a new account?" He looked up, surprised. "Yeah, why?" "With our savings?" He hesitated. "Mom said it was better to have everything in one place. She helped me sort it out." My hands went cold. "Without telling me?" He frowned. "It's not a big deal. We share everything. It's just under my name for now." "For now," I repeated quietly. "And what happens if I need to access it?" He sighed like I was being unreasonable. "You're overthinking again. Mom is just helping me organize." I stared at him, really stared, and realized I was looking at a man who no longer saw me as his partner, but as a problem to be managed. That night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to them laugh softly in the living room, and I wondered how a woman could lose her husband without him ever leaving the house. The next morning, Mrs. Caldwell was humming in the kitchen when I walked in. "Good morning," she said sweetly. "You look look tired. Did not sleep well?" I smiled thinly. "I was just thinking." "Oh, about what?" "About how people can change." She raised an eyebrow, pretending to be curious. "That is a deep thought for so early." I looked at her for a long moment before saying quietly, "Yes, especially when they pretend to care." She blinked, just once, but I saw the flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. It was small, but it was there. That is when I knew she was enjoying this. 2 weeks later, I found the final proof. I was looking for a utility bill in Ethan's drawer when I came across a printed email, one he must have forgotten to hide. It was from the bank confirming that Mrs. Caldwell had been added as a co-signer on the new account. My name was not there at all. For a moment, the world went still. Then I felt it, that sharp, cold burn of betrayal spreading through my chest. I walked outside, needing air, needing distance. The sun was bright, but it felt cruel too warm for what I was feeling. I sat on the porch steps and whispered to myself, "So, this is how it ends." Not with shouting, not with slamming doors, but with quiet signatures behind your back. That evening, when Ethan came home, I tried one last time. "I know about the account," I said calmly. He froze. "What are you talking about?" "The one you opened with your mother." He swallowed hard, glancing toward the hallway where I knew she was listening. "It is not what you think," he said quickly. "Mom just wanted to help protect our savings." "From me?" I interrupted, my voice trembling. He did not answer. "Ethan," I whispered, "I built that account with you. Every late night, every extra shift, every penny we saved, that was us. And you let her erase me from it?" He finally looked at me, and for the first time, I did not see guilt. I saw defensiveness. "She's just looking out for me," he said. "She's worried you're being irresponsible lately." I laughed, but it came out more like a sob. "Irresponsible? For trusting you?" He did not say anything, just turned away, jaw clenched, eyes cold. Behind him, Mrs. Caldwell stood in the hallway watching. There was no sympathy in her eyes, only quiet triumph. That was the night something inside me broke, and something else, stronger, took its place. The next morning, I packed a small bag. I told Ethan I was going to stay with my sister for a few days to clear my head. He did not stop me. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself, pale, tired, but sharper somehow. Before I left, I took one last look around the house. Every corner held a memory, laughter, love, promises. But now, those same walls felt like witnesses to my humiliation. And yet, underneath the pain, a thought formed, a plan. I was not going to beg him to see me anymore. I was not going to fight for a place in a house where I was no longer welcome. I was going to take back everything they tried to steal, not through shouting, but through strategy. I had spent years helping Ethan manage his career, his taxes, his records. I knew where everything was. I knew how his business worked, and I knew how to expose lies without ever raising my voice. If his mother wanted to play power games, I would play smarter. When I closed the door behind me that morning, it was not an escape. It was preparation. I spent the next few days at my sister's place, quiet but thinking. I gathered what I needed, copies of old tax returns, bank logs, photos, messages, everything that showed my role, my contribution, my ownership. I found records of the first house deposit money wired from my account, the renovation payments all under my name, the invoices for Ethan's business expenses paid by my savings. Every detail told a story, and that story did not belong to Mrs. Caldwell. It belonged to me. I organized everything carefully, dates, receipts, proofs, and when I was done, I looked at the growing pile of papers and thought, "You wanted control, Mrs. Caldwell? Let us see how well you handle losing it." because I was not going to expose them privately. I was going to do it publicly, where it would sting the most. When I returned home, everything felt different, colder, quieter, and yet strangely calm. I had left as the betrayed wife. I came back as something else. Mrs. Caldwell was in the kitchen when I walked in, humming that same tune she always did. She turned and smiled, pretending to be surprised. "Oh, you are back," she said lightly. "Ethan did not mention you were coming." I placed my bag on the counter. I didn't think I needed permission to come to my own home. Her smile faltered for a split second before she quickly recovered. "Of course, dear. I just assumed you'd be staying with your sister longer." "I got what I needed," I said, pouring myself a glass of water. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. "And what is that?" "Clarity." She blinked, unsure how to respond. I did not give her the chance. I walked past her, calm and steady, the kind of calm that comes when you have already decided you're done playing nice. That evening, Ethan came home, and for the first time in weeks, he seemed unsure. "Did not expect you back so soon," he said, loosening his tie. "I live here, do not I?" I replied, setting the table for dinner. He hesitated. "Listen, about what happened." "No need," I said softly. "I understand everything now." He looked at me, searching for anger, but I did not give him any. My voice was smooth, almost warm. "I know why you did it. You wanted to feel in control again. You let her convince you that protecting yourself meant hurting me." He sighed. "It was not like that." "Maybe not," I said, looking him straight in the eyes. "But it is like that now." Something in my tone made him pause. He did not know what had changed, but he could feel it. The next morning, I started my plan carefully, quietly. I went to the local community office where Ethan has its company registration files. Because I had helped him set it up, my name was still listed as co-manager. One small detail he had forgotten to remove. That gave me access to every record. I requested certified copies of all our property and financial documents. I did not say why. I just smiled, signed where they told me to, and left. Then I visited a lawyer, not one of the big ones, but a woman I trusted. Her name was Grace Porter, an old college friend who had once said, "If anyone ever tries to take what is yours, come to me first." She greeted me with a warm hug. "You look like someone who has been holding everything in for too long." "I have," I admitted. She gestured for me to sit. "Tell me everything slowly." So I did, from the moment Mrs. Caldwell moved in, to the financial transfers, to the way Ethan erased me from our accounts. When I was done, she was silent for a moment, tapping her pen. "Do you still have the paperwork?" she asked. I handed her the folder I had prepared, every receipt, transfer, and email. Her eyes widened. "This is strong, Claire. You can prove financial misconduct, property fraud, and coercion. He is in trouble if this goes to court." I took a deep breath. I do not just want to win a case, Grace. I want them to feel what I felt. I want them to lose everything they built off my back. Grace nodded slowly. "Then we will do this carefully, quietly. You will let them think you are defeated while we take back control, piece by piece." For the next few weeks, I played my role perfectly. At home, I smiled. I cooked dinner. I acted like the same old Claire, softer, quieter, grateful even. Ethan relaxed. Mrs. Caldwell started leaving her jewelry around again, humming like she had won. They did not know that every night after they went to bed, I sat at my laptop updating Grace, sending documents, and preparing the next move. Grace filed the case in secret, starting with a motion to freeze the joint assets until an investigation could be completed. That included the new account Ethan had opened. The bank froze it within 3 days. Ethan did not realize what was happening until his card got declined at a restaurant. He came home furious. "Do you know anything about this?" he demanded, waving his phone. "The bank says there is a legal hold on our accounts." I looked up from my book. feigning confusion. Really? That is strange. They're saying there's a complaint filed against me, he shouted. I set the book down and smiled faintly. Then maybe you should talk to your co-signer. He froze. What did you do? I stood slowly, meeting his glare. What I should have done months ago. Protected what is mine. His face turned red, anger bubbling. You are going to regret this, Claire. I took a step closer, voice calm and steady. I already did. For years. He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. Mrs. Caldwell followed him, but not before turning to me with a sneer. You think you have won something? She hissed. You are just a foolish girl who does not know when to stop. I met her gaze and whispered, You are right. I did not know when to stop forgiving. That night, I sat alone in the quiet living room. For the first time in months, the house actually felt peaceful. Grace called. The court accepted the injunction, she said. They cannot touch any joint funds until the review is complete. I smiled, closing my eyes. Good. And one more thing, she added. Based on the evidence, you are entitled to a larger share of the assets, especially since you finance most of the property. Once the audit is done, you could take full ownership. My hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from relief. Thank you, Grace. Don't thank me yet, she said. You still have to face them when the truth comes out. I'm ready, I whispered. I've been ready since the day she walked into my house. The next morning, I left a note on the kitchen table. It read, You taught me how to fight quietly. Now watch how I win loudly. Then I walked out, not looking back. For the first time in a long while, the air felt light again. I was not running away anymore. I was walking towards something. Justice. But what came next would shake Ethan and his mother to their core, because soon everyone would know what they did. Not through whispers, not through gossip, through the law and through the truth. When the court summons arrived, I was not home by design. I wanted them to open it without me there. Grace had filed everything quietly, but once the case entered the system, it became public record. That meant every person Ethan worked with, every family friend could access the filings. And small towns have big mouths. By noon, people were already talking. When I got back that evening, the house was in chaos. Ethan sat on the couch, his mother pacing behind him, holding the thick envelope in her trembling hand. You went to the court? She spat. You are trying to destroy your own husband? I dropped my keys on the table. He destroyed our marriage the day he let you move in and turn him against me. Ethan stood, his voice rising. You are humiliating me. My coworkers are calling. The investors should probably know the kind of man they are dealing with, I interrupted. Mrs. Caldwell's face twisted. You ungrateful girl. We gave you everything. I laughed, the sound sharp, almost startling in its calm. You gave me nothing. I built this home, paid those bills, believed those lies. And while you were whispering poison into your son's ear, I was out there holding everything together. She glared at me, speechless. Ethan looked like he wanted to argue, but could not find the words. What do you want, Claire? Money? The house? What? I want you, I said softly. I want you to sit in that courtroom and tell the judge why you thought it was okay to erase your wife's name from her own life. He took a step forward. You are making a mistake. I tilted my head. No, Ethan, for once, I am correcting one. The next few weeks were a blur of hearings, paperwork, and whispered gossip that spread faster than fire. Grace handled the legal side brilliantly. Every transaction, every hidden transfer, every manipulative document Mrs. Caldwell had encouraged Ethan to sign, it all came to light. One by one, his secrets unraveled in front of everyone. At the first hearing, I sat quietly while Ethan tried to explain why half our savings had been rerouted to an account under his mother's name. Grace leaned over to me and whispered, They're cornered. Mrs. Caldwell sat behind him, trying to keep her composure, but every time the judge questioned a document, she would whisper something under her breath. The judge noticed. Ma'am, are you a party to this case? She froze. I am his mother. Then please remain silent. This is between Mr. and Mrs. Taylor. That single line, Mr. and Mrs. Taylor, made something inside me tighten. It was the first time in a long while that my name carried its full weight again. By the second hearing, Ethan's lawyer advised him to settle. His reputation was taking a hit, and the financial freeze had already stalled his business. He came to me one evening looking worn and tired. The arrogance was gone, replaced with quiet panic. "Claire," he said, sitting across from me, "let us end this, please. I will sign over the property, the savings, whatever you want. Just stop the court process." I looked at him for a long time. "So now you want peace?" He rubbed his face. "I made mistakes. My mother, she thought she was helping. Please, can we fix this privately?" I smiled faintly. "Privately? You ruined me publicly, Ethan. You let everyone think I was the problem, that I was bitter, dramatic, controlling. You watched me walk out of the house I built, and you did not even follow me out the door." He swallowed hard. I could not know how bad it had gotten. "You did not want to know," I said. "You were too busy listening to the woman who never believed anyone could love you more than she did." He flinched. "Now," I continued, "you will face this the way I did, with everyone watching." I stood up, grabbed my bag, and walked away, leaving him sitting in the silence he had once forced on me. A week later, the court ruling came through. Ethan was ordered to transfer full ownership of the house and savings to me, as restitution for financial manipulation. His mother was named in the judgment for undue interference. When the decision was read, I did not smile or cry. I just sat there breathing slowly, while Ethan lowered his head and his mother's face turned pale. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited, not many, but enough. One of them recognized Ethan from his small business features. "Mr. Taylor, any comment about the ruling?" He kept walking, jaw tight. They'd turn to me next. "Mrs. Taylor, are you satisfied with the outcome?" I paused, meeting the camera squarely. Justice is not about satisfaction. It is about truth. And today, the truth finally spoke for itself. The next morning, the local news ran the headline: "Businessman loses case against wife over property fraud. Mother implicated." That was all it took. Ethan's investors backed out, his contracts fell through, and the woman who once boasted about her son's success became the center of small-town gossip, the kind that never dies. A few weeks later, I came home to find Mrs. Caldwell standing at the gate. Her hair was messy, eyes swollen. "Please," she said quietly, "you have won. Leave us with some dignity." I looked at her for a long moment. "You took mine first." She lowered her gaze. "I only wanted to protect my son." "I know," I said softly, "but you protected him from the one person who actually loved him." She blinked, stunned at my tone, calm, even gentle. Then I added, "You taught him to lie. I taught him the cost of it." She turned and walked away without another word. Later that week, I received a call from Grace. "Everything is finalized. The property, the funds, all yours now. Congratulations." But I did not feel victorious. I just felt steady. Revenge had never been about screaming or throwing things. It was about watching them realize that I had become exactly what they thought I could not be: powerful, composed, and untouchable. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, the one that overlooked the garden Ethan's mother used to tend. The moonlight fell softly across the roses she had planted, the only thing she had ever touched that had real beauty. I whispered to myself, "Sometimes peace does not come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from finally being seen." Then I took a slow sip, feeling the quiet settle around me. Not lonely, not bitter, just right. Ethan never returned to the house after that. Word was he moved to a smaller apartment in the city, struggling to rebuild what he had lost. His mother stayed with him for a while, but even she could not bear the whispers forever. As for me, I rebuilt too, but differently, with no lies, no silence, and no one standing behind me pretending to know better. Months passed, seasons changed, but the quiet stayed. After everything, the courtroom, the stares, the whispers, I found myself learning how to breathe again. The house that once felt like a battlefield slowly turned into a sanctuary. I painted the walls a lighter shade, changed the curtains, and filled the kitchen with the smell of freshly baked bread every morning. There were no arguments echoing down the hallway anymore, no heavy footsteps pacing in anger, just me and peace, the kind I built on my own terms. But make no mistake, it was not forgiveness that brought me peace. It was accountability. Every morning when I walked past the framed copy of the court judgment hanging by my office door, I remembered what it stood for. I was not just someone's wife. I was someone who learned to stand again and win even after being pushed down. Sometimes neighbors would stop by to talk. The same ones who once whispered behind my back now came with cautious smiles. "You're doing so well, Claire," they would say. "You seem stronger." I would smile politely. I just stopped waiting for someone else to save me. It was not pride, it was truth. Because for years I had been told that strength meant holding the family together, even when it tore me apart. But now I understood something different. Real strength is quiet. It is in the choices you make when no one believes in you. It is in standing your ground when everyone expects you to fall. One afternoon, I received a letter. A familiar handwriting on the envelope. Ethan's. For a moment, I considered throwing it away, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it carefully, unfolding the paper that smelled faintly of the cologne he used to wear. It read, "Claire, I know I do not deserve your time, but I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I see now how much I let her control me, how much I hurt you because I was too weak to think for myself. The business is gone. She's living with my sister now, and I haven't spoken to her in weeks. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know you were right about everything. Ethan." I sat there for a long while, staring at the page. Once those words would have broken me. Now they just made me sigh. I folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer, not to cherish, not to revisit, but to remind myself that regret is a form of justice too. He was living with the consequences of his choices. I did not need to add to them.